Hello, everybody, and a warm welcome here to the Wine with Jimmy portal and channel. Thank you so much for clicking by. So this is all about wine education. So really to get those of you who want to know more about wine, enthused about specific topics, great varieties, and so on in the vinous world. It's specifically designed for those of you studying the world of wine, following key text and key syllabus. So if you're doing the WSET Diploma, for example, this presentation will suit you very well. If you have a question or a comment, I want to hear from you. Please do get in touch about this presentation. Do you have any comments about the climate, the weather, the geology? Have you been to Chile? What have you got to say for yourself? Please do get in touch. So, welcome to the video here talking about the introduction to Chile. And we go through the part 3 here, which is climate, weather, a little bit on topography and geology. As mentioned, this is a free video. Part 1 and 3 in this series are free, but all the other videos are only available to those of you who subscribe to my e-learning platform. That's winewithjimmy.com. Okay, let's rock and roll and have a look at climate and weather. Lots of maps, lots of dramatic landscapes, majestic, which are just beautiful to have a look at because it is the breathtaking country of Chile. It really has epic backdrops. So let's go through all of that. In the presentation, you see here on the left-hand side a normal map of Chile, highlighting there the very narrow, thin strip of a country with Santiago as its capital. So, depending on who you talk to, some people say it's the longest country in the world. Others will argue with that. Perhaps the second longest country in the world. But I want to know your thoughts. I'm not going to say who is number one potentially. Please do put in the comments below what you think is the longest country in the world, because there's a few parameters that people start talking about. It would be good to hear from you. But it does extend around 2,500 miles, that's a long way, or 4,300 kilometers if you are that way inclined, from north to south. And its distance across east to west is only somewhere around 175 175 kilometers or 100 miles. And that's why I've given you a cross section that you'll see at the bottom of your slide there, from the oceanic side to the west, with a slight range in altitude where you have the coastal ranges. Then you have the flatter expanse of the Central Valley, or the intermediate cordilleras, the entre cordilleras. And then you go up, of course, to the Andes, Los Andes, which you see the beautiful stripy action there dictating its altitude, 3,000 meters and beyond. So that gives you an idea, therefore, of the length of this country, but then also a cross-section west to east, and showing you really, and that's not always the case, by the way. This is going through the central part at 35 to 36 degrees latitude. Of course, that will differ when you go to the Patagonian south, or you go up towards the Atacama Desert in the north, where mountain ranges actually converge. But in the middle part of Chile, that's what that cross-section actually shows. Okie dokie. So let's talk about the location more. And in order to get a good sense of the surrounding areas around Chile, we need to talk about 4 key things, 4 sides of the rectangle, I suppose you would say. To the north, we have the Atacama Desert, dramatic, covering really the northern quarter of Chile, and pointed there on your map. To the west, we have, of course, the big, expansive Pacific Ocean. To the south, and the picture to the right-hand side, is the Patagonian glaciers. Okay, I've included a picture of the Patagonian glaciers because most of you will know about the Pacific. Most of you will know about, on its eastern side, the Andes mountain range, a part of the Pacific Rim of Fire. And many of you will know the Atacama Desert. Potentially, you are Top Gear fans in the United Kingdom, and quite classically, the cross of the Atacama Deserts, the journey that Jeremy Clarkson and Richard Hemming and James May did when they were gasping for air as they crossed the mountain ranges there where the air gets thin. Quite famous. If you like to see those three struggling for air, many people actually do. So I thought I'd throw the Patagonian glaciers in because not many people know about it. It's the land, of course, where you find Argentina and Chile sort of crossing in that bottom area where you find a beautiful but cold landscape. Now, the vineyard area of Chile is around 600 miles long in the central section. So that's about 1,000 kilometers, stretching from Elqui Valley in the north, that's at about 30° south latitude, to the Malaco Valley at around 38° south latitude. So that's crazy. It actually spans 8 latitude degrees. And the vineyards rarely stretch more than 60 miles wide or 100 kilometers wide. So crazy. So you're talking 600-mile length, but only about a 60-mile, 10% in terms of its width. And that gives you a real idea of this stretched landscape of Chile. More on the location. In recent years, a number of vineyards have been planted in the Atacama Desert in the north and in the southern sections such as Cautan and Osorno, as you'll see just there. The picture here is vineyards and harvesting at Casa Silva, overlooking the Lagoranco. You'll see the lake in the background. So there are vineyards really in the extreme south being planted, as well as in the extreme north. So we are stretching out with vineyards in Chile as well. Onto its climate. Now, despite covering around that 8° of latitude, the climate actually in Chile is actually fairly consistent. It's typically what we would call a warm Mediterranean climate. So therefore, long, dry and sunny growing season. But there are variables. So we do, as we go to the south, for example, get a lot wetter. And as we head to the north, it becomes a lot drier, which you would expect as you head down in the south towards Antarctica and as you head towards the kind of equator and desert-like conditions in the north. There is the Maipo Valley, Andoraga, in that picture. Also, its low latitudes, we talked about 30° south to 38° south, means that we have quite intensive sunlight, so high UV light, and there's a lot of growth as a result of that sunlight there in some Santa Rita vineyards, always with a dramatically beautiful backdrop. So what about the rainfall? So annual rainfall varies, with northern and inland areas being drier. So in areas like the Elqui Valley, it can be as low as 80 millimeters per annum. Yes, 80 millimeters per annum. That is dramatically crazy. Certainly coming from a maritime climate, the UK, we can get 80 millimeters really in a month quite easily. So you'll see I've got a really great meteorological map on the left-hand side, or diagram, founded on a map, annotated with those rainfall patterns, which are those blue bar charts. And you'll see that it's hardly even noticed. It's hardly even represented on the graph that points towards the location of Pan de Azucar. So that area is where we find, of course, that towards the desert zones where Elqui Valley is located. And then as we start to head south, we start to get a little bit more of rainfall. And then, of course, as we get to the central parts, much more significant. And then in the southern sections for vineyards, rainfall is much more consistent. Always really very sort of summer focused in these areas. So as I mean, sort of the middle months of the year, which of course is winter in the southern hemisphere. So you can go down to 1,200 millimeters of rain, or up to 1,200 millimeters of rain per year as you head down in the Bio Valley. So certainly a real big difference when you look at rainfall stretching from north to south. And we do need to talk about something that affects all Pacific countries like Australia, New Zealand, the Americas, Japan, and that is the El Nino phenomenon. Chile is very much affected by this. So this is not a set phenomenon. It will happen somewhere between every 2 to 10 years. I've actually given you a sea surface temperature in the equatorial Pacific Ocean, showing you the years that we have here. So you'll see that there was a La Niña year in 88, 89, El Nino in 96, 97, another El Nino in 2015, 2016. And we had El Nino in 2022-23. So it gives you an idea of the frequency of these weather patterns. So what does it do to Chile? Now, please remember that El Nino will affect different parts of the Pacific in different ways. With Chile, it does bring through much higher levels of average rainfall. So you'll find rainfall in dramatic years, and in La Nina years, you get more drought and lower rainfall. So we separate them into those two phenomenons. El Nino, higher rainfall, and La Nina will tend to be lower rainfall and drought-like conditions. Now, the phenomenon of El Nino, La Nina, together with the fact that producers are increasingly planting in more climatically extreme parts of the country, means that variations between vintages are becoming somewhat frequent. So climate change, vintage variation is something we do need to talk about. And you'll see here, May to June, so the real sort of winter for this area in 2023, you will see that we have the deviation in comparison of temperatures from 1971 to the 2000 mean. And you'll see as you head towards sort of northern Southern America, you'll see the temperature dramatically rises in that area as a lot of the El Nino weather pattern hits this heat towards that area. But Chile, down in the southern section, will generally remain wetter in an El Nino year. What else do we need to talk about? So the Humboldt Current, something you'll know from your Level 3 certificate, flows up from Antarctica, bringing cold water, and therefore cold air. Now, as warm air rises from the land during the day, the cold air is what replaces it from the coast and from the ocean as that's sucked in. But it will meet heat, and that will cause, of course, your fogs in those areas. And that's what we're on to next. There's a lovely picture there of the Camanchasa fogs in the Atacama Desert. So this production of morning fogs moderate temperatures until they are burned away by the heat of the sun. Something that you will see repeated in places like Californian vineyards that no doubt you have seen videos of before. Humidity is increased off the back of this as well. So many of the vineyards are planted within valleys that run east to west. So most of the climatic variation in Chile's wine growing regions will occur from east to west. So basically, really dictated by the Pacific, closeness to the Pacific, and then all the way to closeness to the mountain ranges. The Pacific Ocean and the Andes mountain range provide cooling influences at either ends of the valleys. That lengthens the growing season and allows the grapes typically to retain higher acidities and, of course, more aromatic aromas. I love this 3D diagram of the valleys, showing you clearly the sea to earth breezes and the earth to sea breezes that come down from the mountains all around the capital city of Santiago. Away, Santiago. So we then talk about the coastal ranges. So this is a significant stretch of low mountains, not that high, 300 to 800 meters above sea level, but these will offer protection. You'll see here there are scatterings of them on the far west of your map where that arrow is pointing. Now, vineyard areas to the west of these mountains are fully exposed to oceanic influences, but most are actually nestled to the east of the coastal mountain range. And the coastal range and the Andes merge together towards the north of the country, in effect, just north of Santiago, in Coquimbo and Aconcagua. But south of Santiago, they part and they offer this lovely green expanse that you see on the map there, creating a large, dry, warm, and sunny central valley. And this means you get ample, wonderful conditions for rather large volumes of grapes on fertile soils, generally with great sunlight, protection against the Pacific, very consistent location for very much affordable wine production. Now, there are, of course, gaps in the coastal mountain ranges, and fogs and cool breezes find their way into those gaps, moderating the vineyards that lie just to the east of those. And I've highlighted the map here of the Aconcagua area. Important, really, because the Aconcagua is really a pioneer for delimiting areas. So you have the Aconcagua Costa, which is an area effectively moderated by the Pacific. You have the central zone, the Ancho Cordilleras, and then the Andes zone to the far eastern side. Now, planting on the slopes of the coastal ranges or on hills in the valleys can provide some cooling influences, either through altitude, a bit of aspect, and vineyards here can actually yield high quality grapes. Our final slide on geology. Let's rock and roll. Oh, lovely pun. Let's get dirty. The river valleys offer fertile soils that are mainly alluvial in nature, with areas of clay, sand, silt, and gravel. The soil on the slopes, obviously through erosion and also less of a topsoil, they are less fertile. In the coastal ranges, there you'll find more gravel with sand and silt, while in the Andes, it's formed of the parent rock of granite that you see in this picture. There is very little of the famous limestone in Chile. The most significant part of Chile is, in fact, the Limari Valley in the north, so not far from Elqui, Limari. In recent years, there has been a real advance in understanding of geology and soil, which has led to a focus on terroir wines and single vineyard. You've only got to look at the likes of Underaga and their TH series, Terroir Hunter series, which is a way of linking geology to the wine style. Okie dokie, thank you so much for your time and attention. I do hope you've enjoyed the video. Please get in touch with any comments or questions about anything we've discussed here. And Chile further afield, please do get in touch. Make sure you click like and subscribe. If you wish to follow on and watch part 4, part 5, and 6, you'll need to go across and subscribe to my e-learning platform. For the diploma, for the WSET Level 4, there are hundreds, around 1,000 of videos, many of those, 3/4 of them, exclusive to those of you who subscribe. So there's a great wealth that follow along from the syllabus of WSET text, plus all my added current information and flair of key facts and added things. So thank you very much for your time and attention. See you soon for another video on Wine with Jimmy. Ciao for now. Goodbye.